First and foremost, for those of you that don't know, my name is Ryan Tolson. I lead the commercial team within Esgian Offshore Wind. Every month, we host a short and efficient webinar typically on a very timely and relevant topic. We do our very best effort to keep these to 19 minutes for many reasons. But we want it to be efficient. We don't want it to be a huge time commitment on your end, and we also want to provide the most bang for the buck of your time here. I do encourage everyone to sign up for our newsletter and follow us on LinkedIn if you haven't already. This is where you get notifications on all future events that we hold. But I do see a number of attendees and names that I recognize, but also see many that are brand new to me. So for those of you that do not know who Esgian is, we're headquartered in Oslo, Norway. We are a market intelligence and data analysis company for the ocean industries. We operate in 3 primary segments. That's offshore rigs, shipping, and offshore wind. Within our offshore wind team, we have 2 primary business segments. The first being our wind analytics platform. This is a database that provides transparency and clarity into a maturing offshore wind market. Very, very simple and easy to use. And at the click of a finger, you can see what is planned in the future by country, by developer. We have a complete list of all offshore wind farms globally. We're following tier 1 equipment contracts, all vessel contracts, supply demand. We have a full factory database, floating wind database, and vessel database, and so much more. The clients that we're typically helping with our wind analytics platform tend to be developers, companies within the supply chain, government institutions, financial firms, and consultancies, primarily helping them with business development, competitive and strategic analysis, and really just a general understanding of the overall market. And with this data, this leads us into our second product offering, which is what we call Green-Packed Wind. We have the ability to quantify and forecast the emissions, carbon footprint, and life cycle emissions of an offshore wind farm. We're primarily helping developers with this when they're bidding into the different lease rounds, helping them differentiate themselves from the competition. But for today's webinar, we're going to discuss and reflect on the predictions that we made in January of 2023. Each year, our team, we sift through our wind analytics database and come up with a number of predictions, typically 10 predictions we come up with. We break these up into different categories. The first half tend to be safer predictions or likely predictions. And then we have a number of predictions at the end that are less likely, but if they do happen, it would have a very, very high impact to the industry. Now, we don't have time to go through all 10 of them in today's 19-minute discussion, but we will highlight about half of them. My colleague Hero, who is a offshore wind analyst on the team, will handle a bulk of the discussion. And I think everyone here today is going to find this very, very insightful as we reflect back on 2023. So with that being said, I'm excited to introduce you to Hero. So feel free, take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. The prediction in 2023, the European market continues to see a growing presence of Chinese suppliers, particularly in the foundation and cable sector. However, in the foundation segment, only Daijin Offshore Heavy Industry secured contracts in Europe, as was the case last year. For the contracts was for Danish and German offshore wind farms involving an estimated 176 monopiles, surpassing the number from the previous year. The cable manufacturer CTT won contracts for Genaker and Baltica 2. However, there was no increase in volume of cable contracts from last year, remaining the same, as the demand for cables is not as high as it is for foundations. As the demand for offshore wind grows, the market is becoming more dependent on the Chinese market to fill gaps. especially notable in the foundation segment. The European market is not necessarily dependent on Chinese cable manufacturers. It's more a question of cost rather than a lack of manufacturing capacity. Those who have secured manufacturing contracts in Europe, we cannot forget those who are actively pushing for them, particularly Chinese turbine manufacturers, especially Mingyang Smart Energy. We cannot assume that expanding one's presence is solely based on physical contracts for a project. It can be much more complex, especially if the company ambitions are slightly higher than others. Mingyang, at its core, is a turbine manufacturer. However, the company has also positioned itself as a developer on certain projects. Mingyang aims to expand its manufacturing on a global scale. To achieve this, they apply on projects as a developer, as seen in Norway on Sørlige Nordsjø II Phase 1. Hypothetical, they could sweeten the offer by proposing to build a turbine manufacturing facility in Norway, adding manufacturing capacity and jobs. And before you know it, Mingyang has managed to establish itself in the European market. What Mingyang is doing is a smart move. They understand that Europe is heavily embedded with the local turbine suppliers, requiring more effort to win turbine contracts by simply submitting a bid. Posing as a developer by applying for the Sørlige Nordsjø II project is the boldest move yet. In my opinion, Mingyang was one of the best qualified candidates on that list, and they have the means to develop that project. Considering that Sørlige Nordsjø II won't sell its electricity on the European market, and the developer won't see any return on their investment, for Mingyang, this doesn't matter because they would then have a presence in Europe. They will happily sink billions of dollars in a project if that means they will gain access to Europe. All in all, I would say this was a hit. For third position in 2023, the market has seen offshore wind emerging in new countries around the globe, as more and more countries are becoming increasingly interested in offshore wind. Among others, we have seen India propose areas for their first round of allocating offshore wind, Colombia setting dates for their first auction, and Greece publishing a roadmap where a number of sites have been proposed. I would say there are safer predictions, and it's a pretty clear hit when looking at all of the new areas opening up for the future developments. Involves more selective bidding from developers. While we have observed a drawback and more selective bidding, as seen with Shell and Ørsted, the reason might differ from what we mentioned here. The drawback could be more based on the cost of projects rather than an abundance of good options in bidding rounds, leading to picking and choosing. Nevertheless, the conclusion remains the same. Developers are becoming more selective about where they choose to develop projects. Therefore, this one could be categorized as a partially hit. Yet, it's important to note that in markets where development is clearly taking place, developers and owners are staying put. This is evident, for example, with Ørsted, which left its position in Norway and Vietnam, but remained in South Korea. In mature markets, such as, for example, the Philippines, some developers have been more reluctant to invest. However, there is still a large appetite for investments in emerging markets. Just to point out Ørsted in the US. Ørsted was hit with a multi-billion-dollar impairment for its US offshore wind portfolio. This event could be partially credited for the fact that some developers have become more selective when it comes to offshore wind projects and their locations. Nevertheless, 2023 has seen developers being more cautious about where to bid, which did occur before the news about Ørsted broke out. Yet, this is not something that happens overnight either. Returning to Ørsted and the US, Ørsted has not left the US despite the high losses connected to some of the projects. The company has neither suspended any projects. Our fifth prediction. the US East Coast is a favorable geographical position when it comes to a unified vessel market between the US and Europe. The transit from Europe to the US East Coast is tolerable in terms of transit duration, which allows the vessel to fulfill its contract in the US and, when finished, quickly return to Europe for another contract. However, the US comes with its challenges, as the Jones Act restricts vessels from Europe, forcing them to use either Canadian ports or apply feeder barges. Both of these options hinder the efficiency of the vessel. This prediction was made at a time when the general focus was on the Jones Act, where it was seen as Achilles' heel for US offshore wind. Instead, Esgian saw opportunity for the vessel market to expand, and it was rather the immaturity of the US market that would be a temporary weakness overall, with a steep learning curve. Cores for installation vessels will be European vessels, and these vessels will work in both markets as if it were one. Buscali's heavy lift vessel Buklift 2 demonstrated that a swift transition between a US contract and a European contract can be achieved. The vessel took 4 weeks from when it left the South Fork project in the US to it begin installing the first monopile motorways in Scotland. What's the alternatives? Dominion Energy is building an only Jones Act purpose-built offshore wind vessel, which is delayed. It is not expected to be delivered for another year at the earliest. The Jones Act compliant feeder solution vessels are dying out. Why build a vessel specifically for the US when you can engage in Europe as well? Maersk is the only company currently constructing a feeder solution vessel, and the vessel has some contracts lined up with Equinor and BP in the US. Right now, there are no other alternatives. All in all, European vessel operators will take advantage of the US market whenever they can to fill gaps in their contract pipeline. So I would say this is a pretty good hit. Just to add, there are 2 offshore wind farms that are undergoing turbine installation in the US. By looking at the wind analytics activity visualization, the first couple of turbines have taken their sweet time, but the learning curve is steep. However, it is important to remember that installation methodology used in the US has never been used on this scale before. I need to remind you that this last prediction was categorized as a low likelihood, but if it had happened, it would have had a large impact on the market. There have been several mergers this year, but I'm not sure if they can be categorized as mega mergers. The APEC region has seen some notable mergers between developers, especially involving Japanese companies. Besides that, mergers could be argued to have a significant impact on the industry, including mergers between Cadeler and Enetti, and CS Wind and Blatt industry, which have a direct impact on the supply chain. These are very common in offshore wind industry, and I won't say this year was anything out of the ordinary, which means this was not a total swing and a miss, yet it does not constitute as a hit either. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, excellent, Hero. I always find it insightful to reflect back on the year and see, what the predictions were from the beginning of the year and what we ended up getting right, what we ended up getting wrong. And you can see, from the predictions that you just went through, there were a handful that we did get correct. There were some that we were incorrect with, and some that we were partially correct on. So I always do find this insightful, and I appreciate you going through these predictions, Hero. To the audience, if you do have any questions, please do type them into the Q&A. I do see one right now just asking if we will share the presentation and a recording of the webinar, which we will. We'll follow up with everyone in the next day or two with a copy of the presentation and a recording. But as I'm waiting for questions to come through, I do want to emphasize that next month's webinar will be on the 2024 predictions. The team is currently going through the data right now to come up with their predictions. Again, broken out by likely and safe predictions to low likelihood and high impact predictions. So I think next month's presentation is going to be a very good one that you will not want to miss. But I don't see any other questions coming through. I do encourage you, if you have any comments, questions, or would just like a one-on-one discussion about the industry or about the products that we have to offer, you can reach out to myself directly. You can see the contact information right there. More than happy. I enjoy these conversations, so I do encourage you to reach out directly. And I do encourage you to sign up for our mailing list. Follow us on LinkedIn for all future events. And I look forward to seeing everyone next month. But hope everyone found this beneficial. Hero, thanks again. I thought it was very, very good.
Of course.
I'll see everyone next month. Thanks for attending, guys. Bye-bye.